Okay, let's get started. Wanted to retape this, in-service that we did for you guys today at MotionPT, just so that we could capture it, we could share it with anybody else that comes on board, or maybe we get some additional questions answered. And I also want to, quite honestly, test the webinar feedbacks that we can do this, tape it, and share it with you guys for educational modules in the future. So let me get started. First off, you should be able to see my screen. You should be able to see me in the screen. So let's start everything off by kind of going into the admin and showing you how you kind of get started or get a person set up. So I'm going in here. I hit the upper kind of what looks like the settings button, and that opens up the admin login function. On your tracer unit on the side is a four-digit number that is your admin login. So if you go in there and you log in, up comes a screen with your admin settings. And so in here, you can create a user. Within that user, you put in their email address. If you don't have an email, you can set up one that comes back to you, or it can be something as easy as me at me if it's a senior that doesn't have an email. But you may be able to use an email of their caregiver or their caretaker that works with them, or one of their children that wants to be able to see their information or get notices and such. Contact phone number, birth date does not have to have the exact day. If you just use the month and 01, like day 1 of the month and the year, we want to capture age so that we can over time track different population sets in de-identified data, not using username or anything, but de-identified data and tracking so that we can create norms and population sets so we can track things and try to help make things even better. First, last name, height, weight. The Social Security last 4 social is not needed. You don't need to put that in there. Gender, male or female over here. And then agree or disagree on our ability to use this in generalized studies, the information, and statistical norm calculations. We're hoping that just about everybody checks agreed on that, but if for whatever reason an organization is not allowed to do that, we certainly understand it would be a disagree, but we think everybody will agree with that. And then you go in and you add. And so then it's much easier to do this. You can do it right in there, but you're typing on your little keyboard, or you can attach a keyboard to your tracer to make it a little easier to just key it right on your computer, or with the access that we give you through an email to log into your own personalized site, you can add users and add a whole bunch of users at once, and it's a lot quicker with on your laptop or whatever else. So other things in this admin settings are the Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi, you can make sure that you're set up and on which group you're set up. Okay, I'm back. So Wi-Fi, you can just see which Wi-Fi you're on, for your unit. If there's multiple Wi-Fis, you can make sure you're on the right one. Next is heart rate. So within heart rate, you can see what devices are connected. So with every unit that we give, we give a heart rate, chest strap. Any other devices, you can see if there's more than one in the room there, you want to make sure that you're working with the right one that's being captured on the screen for using heart rate. Syncing allows you to send data, to and from the cloud, basically up to the cloud. So, when you sync your unit, you can send that information up to the cloud, and, for whatever reason, if they're caught there, you'd call us and tell us, and, we'd help you get through that. But things should automatically sync if you're online, and all of the tests would go up to the cloud. If they're sitting here, like this is right now, you would need to troubleshoot that, or we'd help you troubleshoot that and get them up there. Settings are just basic settings. You can have your search done by username, first and last name. If you don't want first and last name, it can be by username, which will be a somewhat de-identified name. You can change and toggle between feet and meters. So depending on how you want to, track your data, you can do that there as well. So that's kind of the admin area. On top of that, at the top, you've got heart rate. So that's going to track if you are wearing a heart rate monitor, you're going to have your heart rate is being tracked up there. Whoever is the user, like if you log in, you can plug in a user. So I'm using a test user right now, but you plug in whichever user within that list So if you have a list of a lot of people, you can get to their, by first and last name, you can get to who you want to put in there, plug them in, log in, and then, go start the test. So you can change over from one to the next pretty quickly within there, and, you should be good to go. This is just going to have basic information on that, whoever the user is from the username that's in there. So that's what that person up here is. So everything with our system is set up with, well, hold on, one other little thing. So on and off is just basically at the top of the unit, there's a button that turns on and off. You may need to make sure your monitor is on as well, and this should be the first screen that comes up, when you're looking at it. It basically has these 4 areas: assessments, workouts, drills, and rehabilitation. Also within here, you can connect a, basically you can connect a keyboard to one of the USB ports, and then within the USB port, you've got the connection that powers up your mouse. So you can put your mouse on here when you're not using it. It's going to, power the battery on that. But you can take this off and it's portable. You also have on here you have a little fob that basically ties in with this mouse. So when you're using a mouse, you got to have the fob in there so that it allows you to use it remotely like this. The other things that are connections are little Wi-Fi connections. So you basically have your Wi-Fi antennas that are on here to sync up and you get on Wi-Fi. So that's kind of like how to get on and to start doing things. So our 4 sections, we try to make it pretty intuitive, but the 4 sections in terms of getting started are assessments, workouts, rehabilitation, and drills. I'll start us off with assessments. So within assessments, you have your baselines, which are kind of your baseline assessments when you're trying to kind of establish a first, measurement of mobility or measurement of something, and then you're going to be going back to that and comparing time over time. So, a baseline, which is traditionally used with like orthopedic or concussion patients, you'll have a 8-step, basically a bunch of different drills that you go through in a baseline to get going. Someone would walk through this 8 to 10 minute test in terms of doing a baseline, but typically that's more with the youth groups or orthopedic issues and stuff. Not so you won't necessarily use that so much to start. The LAS, the RAS, and the last 20 are all shorter assessments. The 90s are 2 90-second assessments that you'll probably use quite frequently. The last 20 is not a timed drill, but a number of targets drill. So it's hitting 20 targets. So depending on who you're working with, if they're pretty mobile, they can do the last 20. If they're not getting the 20 targets, you want to stick with the time drills. So I'm going to show you a couple of these. So the last drill is a 90-second lateral drill. It stands for lateral agility screen. And you can start these faster than waiting for the countdown that you see there by hitting this play button. Otherwise, you wait for the countdown to start. And you'll see the screen is telling me, who's now the patient or the subject, to move back. So I move back. I can either put my hands up or, my hands in a down fashion or up traditionally. So when it counts to 3, 2, 1, a bumper's going to pop, and I'm going to move to that bumper. And it's measuring, go back to middle. And it's, again, random, boom, back. The next one, where's it going to pop? There. It's going to always pop after I get back to middle, either right or left next. Right? And back to middle. And so this is a 90-second drill, and it's going to measure left and right, asymmetries, and how many targets they can hit in 90 seconds for this drill. And each bumper that's hit is counted as one count. And I'm going to kind of go out of that right now so you can kind of see what the reports look like. So, I'll finish that. We've got reports. So on that lateral drill, I did it for 1 minute and 13 seconds. I hit 14 targets. This is my overview. I hit a distance of 66 feet. Now, a lot of this data will be really good for your environment. You can compare time over time and see the progress that they're making. Calories burned, that's taking my height and weight and everything, calculating out, the calories. The details, I start to get a little more granular information. So again, the activity time, not just the total screen time, but the activity time. my average speed, again, my targets and distance. When it really gets interesting is like when I get into the vector report. So here, you may have to scroll down to get the full screen scene on the right or left. You see where I'm going? So within here, it's measuring how well I move to my left and my right. Then it's measuring that difference for asymmetry. It's doing that for reaction time, speed, acceleration, and deceleration. So we like to see these differences or asymmetries to be 10% or under, making us feel really good that there's not something else maybe going on. The reaction time, obviously on my my reaction time right or left, I'm pretty high difference there. 14% here is close to the 10%. On acceleration, I'm pretty close to the 10%, in terms of left and right. And in terms of my deceleration or ability to stop, which is what deceleration is, how well do I stop when I'm stepping into a bumper, is really good. I'm really close in terms of that. If we go back, you can also look within your assessment that you've done. You can look and see where there changes, or did somebody get fatigued over time. So you can look over the course of that 90 seconds. Did they do better at the beginning and then tail off? So was there a fatigue factor involved? But again, you can look at that for acceleration, deceleration. Did they get better or worse on any of the measurements within there? And history will allow you to compare points in time. So a test on December 9th and a test on December 16th, is going to track how I'm doing over time. So when you've only got 2 points, so 2 tests on the graph, it's not that much. But when you start to get, somebody that's coming in a couple times a week, and then they're coming in weekly, and you try to track in 1 month, you can track a linear trend of where they're going on all their measurements, which becomes pretty powerful. So that's the last 90. Another test that you'll use quite frequently is the RAS 90. So 90-second drill again. But this is a reactive agility screen. You're moving in 8 different directions. So, it's a little more challenging because you're now going, 8 different ways. So again, I'm moving back, calibrates to me in 3 seconds or less. It's got me, you can see me on there. This one, I've got to step into the circle to get the 3-second countdown. So now 3, 2, 1, and now the bumper's going to pop anywhere in the grid. So, I'm here, okay? And I'm trying in that 90 seconds to get as many bumpers as I can. And one of the questions, we get, in terms of your group too is, can I use this, with a walker? So if I've got a walker, I can definitely use it. The nice thing, maybe looks a little stiffer in person, but I can move with my walker and it doesn't pick up my walker as I'm going over it, as you can see. And again, you've got people on walkers, you've got people on canes. Doesn't pick any of that up, but does a really good job. You could also use, a belt to, if you have a belt that you're holding and assisting them, you can even get in behind the person once it's calibrated to them, as long as you don't step between them and the camera when you're doing it. And I'm going to pause for a minute as soon as I get out of this drill. So again, the data would come up, and again, this is comparing one test with another, your basic data, distance, targets hit, time, etc. You get into the details, it's a little more granular, and then you get into your vector reporting, which now, because you've got 8 different directions, you've got, forward, right, so it's measuring a lot of different directions now. But it's comparing test to test, so this, if this was me, I've gone from 32% down to 15% in terms of reaction time variance. From 7 to 10 here, 9 to 7 here, and I have a real deceleration issue because I'm at 27%, but maybe that was because I did some of it myself and some with the walker. So So that's the RAS, and that's a really good one to get them started on if they're capable of moving beyond just laterally. I'm going to come back. I'm going to pause it for a minute, please. So the next thing I want to show you is on the last 20, I said that's really that lateral drill I did the first time, and it's a 20 target drill. So you're in the middle, you don't know which side is going to pop, you go to that bumper, you come back, and it's 20 targets, and that's what that one is. Balance are 3 levels of balance. So from probably what you're going to deal with a lot in the senior realm, you're going to work with a balance 1, which is a real low level balance. It's not requiring hands on the hips. It's not going to require necessarily raising the legs at all. Whereas a best test is a full-fledged best test with feet together, hands on hips, and everything else. And the level 2 is in between the two. So I'm going to show you a level 1. Within level 1, it has the option to check the boxes or take off soft and, add soft if you wanted to. So if I went in here and I clicked on these buttons, it would add soft, and I'd go through all 6. I'd do it first on firm, and then I would do it on soft. I'm not going to do that right now, so I'm going back to this. Because most times you might do it on soft, or you can do that second one is with the eyes closed if you want to do that as well. So I'm going to start with bilateral. So stand in the center, so I got to move back a little bit. Now I'm in position, and it's going to calibrate to me in 3 seconds. Okay, and then each of these balance modules goes for 20 seconds. So if you see the ball moving around in the center, that's basically measuring to my spine, the lower part of my spine. Basically, it's capturing any kind of sway that I have. If I do step, that's going to be a miss. So if I lose my balance and I step, it will be a miss. And that is all tracked in it. So the next one is unilateral, and we'll start that one. And this is, again, so unilateral, raise 1 foot to calibrate. So I don't even have to come up really that far barely off the ground, and I'm calibrating. So I'm a little bit off the ground, and again, it's 20 seconds. My foot drops, that's going to be a miss. But I'm slightly off the ground. And again, it's measuring my sway. Every time I step like that, it tells you to use your non-dominant foot, but I think, in this case, you can use either one. Okay. And then the third is tandem. So my legs apart, hands up to the side, 1 foot behind the other. So it's going to come up. I'm out of position. Then with 1 foot further forward to calibrate. So now I'm a little bit in tandem. And again, it's not as extreme as it would be in the traditional best test. But again, it's going to calculate the sway. And if I do step, as I lose my balance, it's going to measure that as a miss. Okay. So when this completes, I'm going to kind of skip things and go right to finish. And it's going to, the report's going to come up, and it's going to show you how many misses you had, what the total sway was, and your details. You're going to see that triggered in a vector graph of where the sways were happening and what the types of misses were. And for each one, so you can go to what your bilateral was, your unilateral, and your tandem. Your timeline, again, that one won't have, and then you'd have, depending on how you're progressing again historically, you can look at your 3 measurements. So that's your basic balance test, and again, you can put that on soft or eyes closed, if you want to add the second piece of it. Vector test is mostly different movement tests, linear, which is going forward and back, lateral, side to side, react, which is basically starting in the center, a bumper will pop in one of the 8 quadrants, you move to that and move back, and agility is going to measure your ability from the back center to move forward to left and right targets. Again, probably not one that you'll use as much at the beginning. Vertical would be any kind of jumping, so if you have anybody doing jumping. And the overall vector test itself is all of those combined. GPA, so this is one you probably will use. So GPA is a graded performance assessment, and you have a 30, a 60, a 90. So 30 means every 30 seconds, the speed that you're supposed to move from target to target goes up by 1 foot per second. So it's kind of like a cardiac stress test. 60 is every 60 seconds at doing that, and the 120 is every 2 minutes. So typically this is for somebody that's been injured, sedentary, senior potentially, moving up to, weekend warrior, somebody that's, more active, and a 30 is probably your athlete, so your youth and your athletic population. So I'm going to show you, I'll show you the 30. The 120 is the exact same way, but I'm going to show you the 30 so you can see how the every 30 seconds how it changes. So if we go in here again, I'm going to play it faster. So it calibrates again real quickly. I'm calibrated. I'm back here. And the bumpers pop. So I'm moving bumper to bumper. So what you're seeing here, now you're seeing at the bottom of the screen is a grid. And if it's green, that means I'm going the right speed. And each block is a foot per second. So if I go fast, I get up to 2, 3, or 4, which is too fast for my 1 foot per second at level 1. So now level 2 kicked in because we're 30 seconds in. Now I've got to go 2 feet per second. And if I go too slow, that bottom screen is going to be blue. So we've created a dual task where you've got to kind of pay attention to your speed. You're looking up at your time and your count. And, it's constantly, it gets a little bit harder as you go along because it's getting faster and faster. So you can imagine when you're going up every 30 seconds, by the time you get to level 4, you're going pretty darn fast. Now you see blue when I'm going too slow. So I got to get back up to those 3 and I have to start moving. But your seniors in a 5-minute test won't get to that if they're doing the 1. And again, it's capturing the same kind of data that you've captured before in terms of the performance, the details, the vector, timeline, and history. I'm spending a lot of time on the assessment section because this is where a lot of the meat is that you'll be doing to start off. Neuromechanics is a section you may or may not have on your units yet, but it is coming in January. If you have it on your units, it's a beta version. But this introduces cognitive challenges into the environment as you're moving side to side. So you've got a flanker test, a Stroop test, simple math tests that is challenging you to follow and do an instruction that you see at the front of the screen. That's going to direct you and tell you which side you need to go to. So for instance, I'll show you kind of what the flanker looks like real quick. So the flanker has, basically, it's going to have 5 greater than or less than signs at the top of the screen, and I've got to move to the direction that the middle one is. And it pops like a good sound is like yes. And then if I go the wrong direction, I get a X. And basically, I pop through this for 20 seconds. And it's measuring how well I process that information at the top of the screen and then move to where I need to move to. So it's a really good test of cognitive abilities. If I finish that. Another one that's pretty interesting. Again, you may or may not use this, but you can start playing around with this yourself and try these out. But like the Stroop, you may have seen this with like cards, basically having a color and you have to say what the color is as opposed to, what it's spelled. We're sort of doing that here. So it says black, I've got to go to the black bumper. Red, okay? But now it's black, I have to go to the black side, but it's written in green and I might go the wrong way. So again, it's testing your ability to process something in your environment and then make a decision and then you move. And it's tracking all those movement metrics, it's tracking reaction time, which becomes really critical in a cognitive exercise like this. And my arm just got a little disjointed as you saw in my avatar there. So that's the neuromechanics. Fall prevention, which would be an area that you would do. So you've got basically a fall test that we've kind of patterned after the STEADY programs. but modified it to tracer. So we've got the chair stand. It's a 30-second chair stand, which you're sitting in, getting up from a chair. You've got the timed up and go test. You've got the last 20, which is the 20, the 20 targets. The GPA 120, bilateral, balance, so bilateral for balance, tandem, and unilateral. So some balance tests at the end. That's the full battery under fall prevention. If we go into, let's just say we go into the chair stand, so you're going to basically calibrate. And then you stand and sit. And you're doing this for 30 seconds to see how many can they do. Okay, so you kind of see how that one works. And then again, it's going to track your performance on that and give you, the information from a performance standpoint. Now here you don't have a vector because we're just sitting and standing, so you don't have that kind of information for that test. Timed up and go, you guys are very familiar with, and we just kind of introduced this into the tracer environment. So it's got me. Whoops, I didn't calibrate that right. So I'm going to go back. So I was all the way at the back of the screen when I calibrated. So it messed up and didn't let me go back into the circle. So I'm going to show you kind of what you do. If you don't do that right, you go back. Let's start that one. Basically start that one over. So I'm going to get more in the center. I'm going to start. It's telling me to go back. Calibrates on me. I'm going to go back and sit down, and it's going to count down. And I go. And you've got your timed up and go. So those are your assessments. And then I'll be back to you in just a second. So I'm going to resume where I was at. So that's kind of all the assessments. Let me move on to rehabilitation. So within rehabilitation, you have basic, protocols for concussion, ankle, hip, knee, vestibular, and balance. So each of these is 6, as you can see, is 6 phases. So if I go to any of them, there's 6 phases of rehab. And these were all developed by physical therapists at the clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, basically defining different exercises that you need to do and walking you through the various exercises per stage. Each stage then is progressed to the next stage, increasing the intensity, the speed, the demand on the body as you try to get back to a return to function, return to play scenario and get back to where you were before. Obviously, the best case scenario is if you have a baseline or have a snapshot of their mobility pre-injury, you can track them through the course and see how close you're getting to where they were pre-injury at phase 6 when you're back and almost ready to go back. And measure that up against it, and that's helping you make a decision within your practice that they're ready to go. I'm not going to walk through a lot of these right now because that's not really about getting you up and going, but you feel free to go into any of these, try them out, ask us any questions when we get back with you later on. But it's an important, certainly it's used in, the orthopedic realm. It can be used with any of your patients that, coming back from a knee injury or a hip injury or whatever else. You can use some of these exercises and these routines to, try to help them in clinic. The drills are all centered around, so the balance drills are all centered around those 3 balance assessments that we did, but they're broken into the individual components. So you can do any one of these, the level 1, level 2, and then the level 3 are the best test. So you can do bilateral 1 just as, just to test and to improve or practice with them on some of the balance drills. Same thing with unilateral. Or level 2, you may want to progress them depending on where they're at. So that's what those are. Mobility drills are a little different because these are all different patterns or different exercises. So any movement pattern you can pretty much replicate within this 10 by 10 area on Tracer. And we've tried to capture those in here. And these are great training drills. Great, you can set up, 3 or 4 of these, put them together in a exercise plan, have them do 3 or 4 of these. And if you do the same one the next time, if you write down what the program was or you set it up, you can come back and do the same ones. And again, you can compare that data from one test to the next for that patient. But you've got a whole bunch of different, stuff in here: lunge, react drill, linear and lateral, mini T's where you start at the back, go all the way to the front. You have to then, a bumper's going to pop left or right, and you go to that, come back to the middle, and come back. Shift and bump is where you're moving the hips. So it's a little shift and bump. Don't comment on my dancing. So you have pretty much any kind of different drill that you can think of built into this section. And finally, we have workouts, and the workouts are really a combination of different of the drills, and it's a makeup of the different drills. But basically, it's either on endurance, which is just a straight out, you go as long as you can, or it's a 20-minute endurance test. That's not one you're probably going to be using at all, but it's there. Balance, again, are your 3 levels of balance. Speed, have just different exercises and things that you would do for each one of those if you're training speed. So these are workouts that are a little longer than just a single drill. Agility, same thing. Agility 1, 2, 3, and low impact agility. That's kind of what we've got here. Again, we'll send you an email if you give us your, who you are and which of the clinics you're at. We'll send you out your username so you can get onto the site and basically see, get yourself set up so you can, put users in there, track reporting within there. It's a lot easier than necessarily just looking at everything just on the unit itself. So that's about it for now. If you have any questions, I was doing this and just talking to you here, but if you have any questions, feel free to email me at cwaters@tracer.com or info@tracer.com if you've got any questions for tech support or anything else that we can help you with, so you have the best experience and can really create an environment that is, engaging and challenging and really motivates and helps your subjects or your patients, move a lot better and, cognitively and, mobility wise. So thank you very much. And I hope this was helpful.